We all need gis, rash guards, and a bunch of gear to train jiu-jitsu. Here at RŌL Academy, we've been using Fuji Sports for a very, very long time, but more importantly, they've been sponsoring the RŌL Radio podcast for over a year at this point. Gary?
Yeah, I'm checking out the website right now. Anything you could possibly need, but the new stuff, this American Grappler stuff, is amazing. It's so slick looking. Rash guard shorts, really cool, giant eagle on it. It is nice. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, they've got the Be a Menace Happy No Gi lineup. So as you're getting choked out, you're looking up at the nice smiley face emoji. Anything you could possibly need, you can find at fujisports.com.
You have questions, I have answers. I started a brand new podcast just recently that's available on all podcast platforms and YouTube. It's called Ask a Black Belt. Very simple. You drop me questions, I answer them. Very simple, 5-6 minutes. Gary, have you heard it?
I have heard it, and I really appreciate it. How do those questions get to you?
Well, listen, you can message me on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. But you can also comment on any post that I make, and I try to genuinely answer the questions as fast as I can, and they get posted 3 times a week as it is right now.
Beautiful. Ask a Black Belt. Check it out on your favorite podcast platform. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please remember to hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. That ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content that you have come to expect. On this episode, we have Carlos Gracie Jr. Black Belt, Carlos Maia. Professor Carlos has been at the forefront of spreading jiu-jitsu in Central Europe, and today he shares with us what it was like opening an academy in Slovenia without even speaking the language, his teaching philosophy, the changes he has seen in jiu-jitsu since the 1990s, and the car accident that almost ended his jiu-jitsu career and his inspiring comeback to the mats. Here's the RŌL Radio with a true ambassador for BJJ and a jiu-jitsu pioneer in Central Europe, Professor Carlos Maia.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we're live.
Here we go.
How was your weekend?
It was long. It was my, I don't like to say birthday weekend, but Friday, last Friday was my birthday, so I had a lot to do.
Happy 75th birthday.
I feel like I'm 75 after yesterday. Open mat, started every round on the bottom just to see how that would go, and it went okay sometimes, and it went pretty bad some other times, and some successes, but boy, my shoulder on this side is destroyed. My elbow on this side is not doing so well. So it was a long weekend. We'll put it that way.
Why weren't you protecting yourself?
I was protecting myself. That's to the best of my ability, and we know what that is. So I might have had my elbow pop. I might have been Kimura.
You're so violent.
I'm not. I was taking it easy. I started on bottom. Everybody else was violent.
Oh, so wait a minute. So you put yourself in a compromised position intentionally?
Absolutely.
Why?
So I could get better.
Oh,
right.
I wish more people did that.
It's something we've been talking about a lot, and I think more people should do it. I think it teaches you a lot, not only about your skill level and what you need to do and what you need to work on, but I think getting smashed round after round after round right off the bat teaches you a little bit about yourself too. So
yeah, it's like jiu-jitsu is like the only sport where you get destroyed, you get mopped on the floor, and smashed and everything, and aches and pains, and you keep coming back for more.
Yep. I don't know why, but maybe we can figure that out another time. We should probably get to our guest.
All right. And once again, we are going international.
Yes.
We are reaching over the pond. Professor Carlos Maia in the house. How are you, sir? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much for having me here. How are you guys?
We're good. Other than being sore, I'm good.
Gary complains about it. Jiu-jitsu is beautiful, isn't it? Little aches and pains here, but life is good. Interesting part about you, Professor, is that one, you essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you are responsible for bringing jiu-jitsu to the region where you are currently located. Is that correct?
Yes, there were some people here before. First of all, I would like to talk also with everyone that is with us. Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about my life in Jiu-Jitsu. And yeah, I came to Jiu-Jitsu. I came to Slovenia in 2008 for the first time. There was some people here before. There was some instructors that came for seminars to teach them something. But I came here for a period of 3 months and then a little longer. And later on, I moved and I start with the project of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I mean, there has to be a sense of a lot of great responsibility if you're in a position of you coming in, not to the academy, but to that region. And you are solely responsible for really not only exposing people to jiu-jitsu, but also growing the community, right? Growing that culture of jiu-jitsu. And on top of this, you are foreign, right? I mean, that you're foreign to the country, right? You're going completely to the different region, to different culture, and you're bringing this beautiful thing that we all love, which is jiu-jitsu. Was there a lot of pressure on you? Did you feel pressure as all of this was unfolding?
Not at first, because I didn't understand the dimension of what I was doing. I saw my friends moving out of Brazil. They were trying to do, I had friends in Oceania, in America, teaching jiu-jitsu. And I thought that could be an interesting adventure. At first, it was more like this. Okay, I'll go to another country. We can come there. I'll show some techniques. I will visit a new place. I will meet new people. It was more like this, I didn't come at first with this idea of developing anything. But once I came to Slovenia, I realized that there was no jiu-jitsu here. And actually what I was doing was starting a new culture. Because even those that come to jiu-jitsu, they didn't know what jiu-jitsu was. I remember my first class, you have guys with kids' belts and a couple of them with red belts, some guys with shoes, some guys without pants, So the first impression was, okay, I have a lot of work here, because first I have to explain that we don't use red belts in the first year of jiu-jitsu.
That's a valid point. Yeah.
Yes, but then I realized that they were training other styles of jiu-jitsu here, and I think in the traditional jiu-jitsu, the red belt is the first graduation. So they were using the belts of their style, So it was more like martial artists from different styles, mostly strikers that want to learn some ground game for MMA. That was mostly who was looking for training. So at first, that was my contact with the people. I was more trying to teach them how we use jiu-jitsu in MMA and how we understand jiu-jitsu based on my background, right? So at first, that was the idea. And people like it. They invite me to come back. And on the second visit, I was already thinking about establishing a school with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu style and culture, and that's what I did. That's basically how it all started.
How do you handle, or how did you handle the language barrier? And listen, I was born in Poland. I moved to States, when I was a young teen. So I understand completely some of the obstacles and just life events that take place when you forklift your life. You literally move it over and you move it significantly far away to different country, different continent, different culture. But the language barrier, it is often a big obstacle. Communication is huge, even in jiu-jitsu, right? Especially when you're an instructor. What was going through your mind?
Yeah, I had a big challenge because I also didn't speak English at all. I had a little understanding. I studied a little bit in school, but in Brazil, we don't understand the importance of it. Maybe nowadays with the internet, but at that time, we didn't speak English or study English seriously. So I had this challenge. I didn't speak English as well, So I had first to learn English. And I remember I memorized a phrase that I was repeating on the airplane that was like, of course, I understand if I don't speak English, but I understand if you speak slowly. I didn't, but I said, well, if they don't speak with me, I'll never learn, So I said, look, when people do speak English, I don't speak English, but I understand if you speak slowly, And in this way, I start to catch up with English first, because here they speak Slovenian. But of course, because not everybody speaks Slovene, they speak a lot of languages. Some of them speak German, Italian, English. They speak at least 4 languages, what is very interesting for me,
So what language did you teach? Like the very first time when you come in, did you speak Portuguese? And that's what I mean. Did you teach in Portuguese?
Well, what I did I think people call it flashcards, right? I saw one American student in Brazil that between trainings, he had some cards with the words in Portuguese in one side and English on the other side. So I did 300 flashcards just with things that I would probably use while I teach. So like arm, leg.
You have 300, 300?
Yes, I had 300.
That's a lot of flashcards.
There's no room on the mat to train. It's just all cards laid out in front of him.
Of course, I start with like 50, and then I start with 200, and and I use it. I use that. I was trying to memorize those words, but of course, it was a big challenge. I started the class like most of Brazilians. Look, I don't speak English, but I speak Jiu Jitsu. So I use this like many Brazilians use. And I try to teach them with the movements because as I said to you guys know a little bit of my story. And when I have the accident with the car that broke my hand, I was teaching Jiu-Jitsu at that time already. And because I couldn't show the techniques, my hand was immobilized with metals inside. I was forced to explain things more with words, and it forced me to develop a skill of explaining with words, But once I came to Slovenia, I have the challenge because I couldn't use this skill. I have to use the other aspect that was showing as much as I could. Because in reality, when we start teaching, we realize that our students, that they are more visual. Mm-hmm. Some students, they are more sensitive to what they hear. And you have even those that they need you to touch them. They need to feel you. They need to have that contact with you, and that you even have to put the hands on, like, no, here, you even have to do the technique so they will feel that. So I had to develop myself as instructor also in this period of my life. It was not only the challenge of the language, but I also had to develop a more complete way of teaching, not only show a movement, but try to bring all these aspects, But of course, I was speaking a little like my English was terrible, so it's not good yet. But, at that time was like grab arm, push leg, turn hip. It was more like this. And in this way I started. My students helped me a lot because I was with them most of the time, and they were constantly speaking English with me, teaching me things. And this was the biggest challenges in the beginning here. But of course,
we'll get to your accident in a moment. I do want to talk about your accident in a moment, but before we get there, I want to talk to you about really this communication factor, right? Like, as instructors, we have to communicate, and you're right. There's different ways of communicating: verbal, visual, touch, right, and anything that's between. And different people respond different ways. But what I want to pick your brain on about is there's a lot of instructors around the world who can speak the language and they are not, let's be flat out about it. They are not really good instructors. And then you find yourself in a position where you don't speak the language, and like you can't even use that to your advantage. Like, what are the things, what tools do you use to become good instructor? Because I mean, I think if instructor sucks, people quit, people leave, people get discouraged. And there is a lot of phenomenal instructors out there. So there's mind-blowing instructors, but there are some who are not. And how do you get better? How do you go overcome these challenges?
Well, Thomas, I think it's about the experience bring you this, right? So with the years teaching, you start to understand the need of your students, because also the profile of my students changed through the years. As I said before, I start with students that they were more interested on how to defend themselves in MMA. And then I came to a moment that I have more people interested into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. At this point, I was already speaking better English, and they all understand. So the language was not a barrier anymore. But I think the teacher should find the needs of the student and understand how he can pass the knowledge and respect the moment of the student. I think you have people that when they start jiu-jitsu, they have some needs, and at certain point they have different needs. And once Master Carlos told me one thing that stick to my mind, is that he said, Maia, the best teacher is not the best fighter, is the most sensitive human being, is the one that can feel, is about feeling. And that's what I keep in my mind when I'm teaching and when I'm doing my work. It's like focus on the feeling and on the connection I can have with the student in different levels, because as I said before, people search for jiu-jitsu for different reasons, and if you just teach for one profile and you are just focused on one thing, you're going to have challenges sharing jiu-jitsu with all type of people. That's what I learned from my teacher, my masters, and to spread jiu-jitsu for those that need it, not only for those that have a specific profile. So I think when we develop this feeling and we try to be more sensitive to what the students need, we find a way. I think that's how I try to drive my classes and my work in Slovenia.
So excuse me, essentially what you're saying is that it's not about me teaching what I want to teach. It's more about me teaching what my students need.
Exactly. I think that's all about it. You have to understand that, jiu-jitsu, of course, you have a curriculum, you have classes, but this you can teach this in different ways. You can teach the same content to a group of competitors, to a group of people that is doing jiu-jitsu just to have a better life. They don't have any goals as a competitor. And you can teach the same set of movements in a totally different approach. And it goes also to the self-defense. It goes also that's how I see, And I think that's the main thing. Of course, when I don't want to be misinterpreted, the students don't have I'm a little old school in this way. The student have to do what he have to do. It's not like, okay, I want this, I want that. But I think that you have to feel how to approach that student and how to keep him motivated, because in jiu-jitsu, we are frustrated most of the time. And if you don't have the ability of keep people motivated with small goals, and for example, I can bring a story that is interesting to share about because this I had to do with myself at some point.
Please do.
Yeah. When I came to Gracie Barra, one of my idols were there. His name was Soca. And I had a dream to train with him because I have a big story with him as a fan and then later as a training partner for years of my life. But the first training I had with him, I was a blue belt and he was a black belt. And I was really competing. In my mind, I was in good shape. And we had the same weight. Actually, people used to call me Soquinha, like the little soccer. It was like my nickname because we had the same body type. I used to go to watch him competing and I copy his movements, it was like I have already a relationship with him, even if I didn't know him well. And when he invited me to train for the first time, of course, as a blue belt in 90s, I would never invite him. I was waiting for that opportunity. And he invited me to train. And I said, okay, today's the day. Let me show him, my idol, how good I am. And I remember we did the 10 minutes round and he finished me 13 times. I still remember that. And I went to drink some water and I was totally frustrated, disappointed because I was doing good in my mind. And I didn't know what to do. But then I went home and I said, okay, now I have this to face reality. I'm not as good as I think. But I can create a little thing to motivate me. I tapped 13 times. So now if I tap less, it's already a win. And I remember it took some time, he invited me again. And on the second time, he tapped me 8 times. And I was so happy. He didn't understand why. But, for me, it was a win. And it's a lot about create this type of goals, small goals that keep you motivated. I think this is what I pass to my students. You don't have to be the best in the room, but you can create your personal challenges and you're going to achieve them if you put dedication into it. If you're committed to your goals in jiu-jitsu and you take responsibility, right? So you decide to learn jiu-jitsu, you want to be better. You don't want to be better than someone else, but you can be every day a little better than you were before because we experience this on the mat. We know, and this is something we can easily share with people. We just need to find a way to touch them because they all have, like we said before, different ways to absorb, right? So I try to do that. We don't achieve this every time, Sometimes a student get out of the net because, it's difficult to embrace and understand everyone. We don't have this skill. Maybe I'm not mature enough to understand in this level, but I do my best, do my best to give them this type of advice, that you don't have to be the best. You can create small goals and still progress and have fun at the same time.
You nailed this. And Gary and I, we talked to several different guests literally about this topic, setting goals and how to measure jiu-jitsu, how to dissect it so we can, touch it or feel it. Because every time we have a training session or a sparring session or even a class with different people, everything changes. This guy's taller, this guy's shorter, this girl is different shape or size or age or speed or whatever. Everything changes all the time. And if we look at somebody else, it's almost impossible to measure this in any capacity. So we have to find some anchor points for ourselves. And this could be, showing up more often. This could be having one extra session. This could be sparring 1 minute longer, getting tapped out one less time, or passing guard one extra time. There are so many things that we can focus on, but I feel like a lot of times students focus, well, he's getting better. I started before him and he's better. He has a different color belt. I don't know. I'm younger and he's smashing me. I'm heavier and he's tapping me. We always compare ourselves to somebody else. And I feel like, and please tell me what you think, but I feel like we literally setting ourselves for failure instantly. Like like this is not the route, is it?
That's what we see nowadays, not only in jiu-jitsu, but in social media and everything. The pain comes from comparing. You're constantly comparing yourself with others, and not comparing with yourself with that guy that started jiu-jitsu one day. The person you are now and the person that you were before jiu-jitsu. You know, if you keep comparing yourself with that man that started jiu-jitsu, that have reasons to start, and maybe now you are more confident. Now you have the benefits of jiu-jitsu in your life, you know. So I think this is the world we live now. We tend to compare, and that's where the pain comes from, you know. That's where we see people suffering nowadays, you know. And on the mats is the same. I will not say that didn't happen before, you know. I also had that feeling that people had sometimes they get better than me, you know, and I had to deal with that, you know. I had to deal that. We also have moments that in jiu-jitsu, you guys know that we have moments that we have those clicks that we have a little, we open a little box. I used to say, you open a little, one movement that you learn, open one concept that you learn, open a little understanding of jiu-jitsu, you know. So you have those moments of clarifying and understanding, and you have those moments of hard work and not a lot of progress, you know. But I think that's also what, once we understand, we keep moving on. It's one of the biggest lessons jiu-jitsu gives to our life, you know, is that we have to keep moving on independent of what's going on, you know, that mentality of not giving up that jiu-jitsu teaches, you know, I could tap here, but I hold a little more. Why? I can hold a little more, and eventually you escape. And you say, well, I could give up before, and I didn't, and I see what happened. And now I can bring this to my life. I can avoid giving up in things that we used to. And, you know, when we have this connection between what we learn on the mats and to life, you know, when we're able to connect these things, it's amazing. But this is a process, it's such a personal process, you know. I think it takes some time for people to realize the power of jiu-jitsu, you know. So as instructors, I think we have the challenge just to keep them there. We just have to stay here, you know, because once you start to take jiu-jitsu more seriously, these benefits start to be clear, you know. I see like this.
Yeah, it's like opening different doors, like going from room to room. And like if you are in this room, you don't see what's beyond that room. You don't see what's outside. But the moment you open the door, oh, there's another one, and another one, and another one. And as time goes on, you've gained all this experience. You learned all these skills. You have this beautiful journey that we can talk about, right? And we can share with others. And then, you know, some of us have this opportunity to share that knowledge with others as on the mat, as instructors, and pass on that knowledge to the next generation, right? Gary, you're looking like you're going to say something.
Well, I do.
Did you want to say something or make fun of me?
I always want to make fun of you, but we'll skip that for right now. Were you self-aware like this going back to your car accident? Or was this something that you learned, you know, as the years went by, and now in retrospect, you can say, you know, jiu-jitsu helped me through this? Or was it more, you know, I guess you took a long time off after the accident. I guess what I'm getting at is was this knowledge instilled in you already? Were you able to use it during this time, or was it something that you learned after?
Well, when the accident happened, I was in the top of my career as a jiu-jitsu athlete, right? So I just did the Brazilian National Championship, was a champion as a blue belt. I got second place in the World Championship in '96. I fought Leonardo Santos in the final. Oh. And Leonardo was unknown at that time. He was 15 years old. I remember people telling me, oh, you're going to fight a very good kid. He's 15 years old. And I was young and arrogant. And I said, come on, man. How can a 15 years old kid beat me? And that was just what happened in the final. You know? So it was a great lesson. So, you know, I had a lot of lessons in that period of my life of winning and losing, but nothing so strong like the car accident that I was involved in, because that took my dream off me. You know, the doctor said to me, you never have the movement of your hand again. At that time, I was starting in the university. So in jiu-jitsu, at that time, was more like a serious hobby than a profession. You know, not many people live from it. So jiu-jitsu was a very serious hobby, but still a hobby because we all we were all studying, doing other things. My generation was more like this. We were doing jiu-jitsu, dreaming with jiu-jitsu, become professional, but we're amateurs. We're more spending money than earning. So, that was more like a dream. But I keep jiu-jitsu very seriously. I start teaching very young. So at that time that I was teaching jiu-jitsu, training, winning competitions, I got my purple belt from the hands of Carlos Gracie Jr. So I was feeling on the top shape, already doing conditioning training, something that at that time people didn't do much, but I already have my personal conditional trainer. So I was taking it very serious. And then one day, coming from an event, me and my friends, I was in the passengers seat, and I was trying to move the radio, and my friend crashed the tree, and I almost fly out of the car. So at that point, I broke my hand, I broke my face, my knee also was destroyed. And when I came walking to my house, because it was very close to where I lived, and I had my friends there, they thought that people jumped me because I was so destroyed. And they said, where are they? Where are they? And I couldn't explain that nobody jumped me. It was just a car accident. And I was trying to explain them, because I was totally destroyed. I said, what happened? People jumped you. What is going on? And I was like, no, I just had a crash car accident. And the doctor said I will not move my hand the same way. I lost a little of my mobility on this motion, on opening the hand. But on squeezing, I start to do so many workouts to get back my grip that my hand became really strong. My grip became like never before, because I was constantly doing workouts with my hand. But the fact that I have to stay away from the training, of course, affect me because when people speak about jiu-jitsu to me, I feel pain. It was like, man, stop talking about it, because I cannot train. I cannot compete. And people asked me when I was going to compete again. So it was very painful time. I decided to move away from jiu-jitsu completely, in a way that I said, I don't want to talk about it.
So hold on, before we get to that part. So accidents happen. You get out of the car. You walk home. Can you even walk? Like how are you said your knee is destroyed? How are you getting home? Like
it was like that Walking Dead. I was more like a Walking Dead
dragging
character. Yes, I was dragging and I went straight to hospital.
So okay, so the same night you go to hospital?
Yes, the same night straight to hospital, and then I had to arrange the surgery because my hand was like a boxing glove and I couldn't do nothing. And I didn't know how serious was it.
So at which point do you find out that this is more serious than just, a bump? Like, there was an impact to your life?
After the surgery, when I had to talk with the doctor, he said to me, I know you're studying law. I think it's an amazing profession. It would be amazing that you put more effort on it because you do jiu-jitsu like you used to do.
And what's your thoughts? What's going through your mind? The doctor tells you're not going to be able to use that arm. What's your thought?
Man, the doctor gave me a book of a samurai. He gave me a book of Japanese history. He was also a martial artist. And he said, look, it's not, you still can train, but you never perform. I know you're a champion, you're competing, but it will be hard for you to perform like you used to. I think you should focus on something else. And I was with my daddy. My daddy said, look, it is what it is. And at that point, I was a bit rebel against life. I felt that was not fair because I was such a dedicated person. I didn't go out. I didn't do things. And then I decided to enjoy life. And then I start to go to parties and go to places that I didn't used to go. I start to do things that I didn't used to do. So it was a moment of my life that I had to, I feel like in a free fall, That's why I like to compare jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is like a parachute for me. Because when I'm doing jiu-jitsu, I can see the view. I can enjoy the journey. But when I'm not training, I feel like in a free fall. jiu-jitsu keep me mentally healthy. It was always like this. And I remember that at that time, I didn't have a place to put my energy. I was feeling that this was something that not supposed to happen, and it was not my fault. I didn't do nothing wrong, So it took a little time till one of my friends, Bruno Triangle, one day, because I got involved with music, I made a band. I was doing everything, I was trying to find directions. I was like 19 years old, and I was doing different things.
So to make sure that we understand, there was, in that period of time, there was zero jiu-jitsu. You removed that from your life.
I removed that during, let's say, 1 year.
Okay.
For 1 year, jiu-jitsu was not present in my life. But as I said, my friend met me once in the street and said, "Man, why are you not training?" And I said what the doctor said and so on. I explained him the situation, and I was really, I didn't deal good with the experience, And he said, "Well, man, I was always inspired by you, Why?" I think, and he was teaching, in a school. He said, "I would like that you come to teach with me, that you come back to training." And I was like, "Man, but how I would teach if I'm not even training anymore?" I said, "Man, you can teach what you know. You're gonna be, you're gonna be on the mats, And as I said before, I didn't stop teaching because I was teaching in my professor's school, so I kept teaching jiu-jitsu. But my connection was like in this 1 year, 6 months, I disconnect completely, and the other 6 months, I was just teaching. So I cannot say that I was completely disconnected, but mentally, I was not there. I just teach because people say you have to teach, it's important. But I lost the hope. And then I came to a point that I couldn't do it anymore. And then I stopped teaching. I decided to find other works. I put my time in the law university, and then I finished the university. It was a moment of my life that jiu-jitsu, it became something that I love, but I couldn't do. And at some point, yeah.
Is there a point where you quit? Has the quitting point is in your life, or is it more of like, I'm putting this on hold?
There was a moment that I admit that I think about that jiu-jitsu was over. After the doctor said that to me, I put in my mind that it was over, that I would never achieve that level I used to have. And I said, I can't do anymore. But as I said before, I start to work on my grips. And when I start to go back to training, but more like I feel that something was missing in my life. And when I came back to training, I immediately got hyper motivated. I said, man, I'll go back, not only back to train, I go back to competitions, and I start to train like crazy. In less than 6 months, I got my brown belt. I was trained like never before. I participate in every competition that was available. It was a special moment in my career as an athlete. I was also teaching in my free time. I changed my law university. I stopped my law university and I went to physical education for 1 year. I was so much into it. I said, I'll put everything into jiu-jitsu, But later on, I stopped the physical education university. I put all focus on jiu-jitsu. And the other half of the time, I was focusing on my law degree. Because like I said, at that time, it was so difficult to live from jiu-jitsu that we all feel that we need to have some plan B, So it was all of us, or many of us, they decide to go in this direction. Some of my friends, they put everything into jiu-jitsu, and they are very known nowadays, and they are really famous in jiu-jitsu. My friends, I love them, but my story was a little different. I tried to do different things.
Well, that's part of life. It's part of life to go discover things and make mistakes and change directions and really go through this discovery and become who we are. I mean, I'm sure Gary can tell us the same story, or his story, I can tell mine, and it's never easy, straight path. There's a lot of turns in different directions, but as I'm listening to you, what's interesting is that within a year and a half, you go from the point of car accident, you get hurt, you might not move your arm or your hand, to point, I'm going to start disengaging, to the point of, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to focus on my school. Then somehow you come back, and then you work even harder than you did before, and then you get your brown belt. That moment of being rewarded with that next level belt had to be rewarding at that point. Was it?
Yes, was. It was important for me, but it was not my goal at that point. I just had that feeling that I lost time, that I waste my time doing other things, and I have to recover that. I have to achieve my level, the level that I used to have. And that was the drive, that was what motivates me. I had to push myself back to the level.
That's what I was going to ask, is what motivated you through that time? And was it just that you needed to make up for it? You realized how much you love jiu-jitsu, and now you got to make up for that year and a half?
Yes, exactly. I saw the impact of jiu-jitsu in my life and the impact of a life without jiu-jitsu. And I could compare that, and I said, I'll go back to jiu-jitsu, but now I will put everything, I'll put all my energy into it, and it was great. It was a lot of learning. The competition level was already much higher than it used to be when I stopped training. So the new athletes, they were really good. I have to get into the game. I have to understand the new techniques, So it was difficult.
What was the hardest part of that transition back into it and back into competition? What was the most difficult aspect of it?
Yeah, the set of techniques, it changes too fast in jiu-jitsu. That's what if you stay a few months away from the scene, when you come back, there are new things and you're already out. So imagine 1 year and a half. Even if I was teaching and I was still in touch with jiu-jitsu, there were techniques that they were new at that time. For example, I went to compete in the Brazilian Nationals as a brown belt in São Paulo. And I came there to compete with one of my friends in the second fight. He was my friend, but we trained in different schools. His name was Teodoro Canal. He was a great fighter from Gracie, Gama Filho. And at that time, it was very popular in competitions, the wrist lock, from standing. So there was a huge influence of Fredson and other athletes or Professor Osvaldo Alves. They use a lot the wrist lock. And this, my friend, Teodoro, he was a wrist lock guy. He was training this, he was using this in tournaments, but I was not going there to watch, I was a little out of the game. So I had the first fight, I did really good. And on the second fight, I had my friend Teodoro. I went really relaxed. I put my hand on his kimono, and when I grabbed the gi, he just held my wrist in full wrist lock. I was totally relaxed, and I got submitted in 5 seconds. I didn't, it was like, oh, and I didn't even tap. I just said, "Aye." And the referee stopped the fight, and he told me, "You tapped." This was a new rule that I also didn't know.
Oh, okay.
If you say "I," it's tap. Mm-hmm. And I start arguing with the referee that I didn't tap. I just said, I just, and he said, "No, you said you did a verbal tap, and by the rules, you're disqualified." And this is one example of you being out of the sport. And then I realized, look, if you want to go back to the game, first make sure that you're into the game, that you know what people is using. It's like nowadays, one person that is out of jiu-jitsu for a few years go to a no-gi tournament with one fighter from America, expert on heel hooks and stuff. He'll probably he'll get submitted very quick, right? He do not even know what's going on. So I think once you decide to go back to tournaments, you have to be sure that you know all those set of movements that people use now, what is going on. It's very important, I think.
Well, and this happens quite frequently, I think. It's just, as you sit back as an instructor or even as a training partner, if somebody disappears for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 6 weeks or 5 months or 6 months, whatever the period is, longer the period is, that return, it is so difficult mentally and physically, right? The physical part, I often think, is the easier part. The mental part, getting your mind around the return, what to do to really catch up to the previous state is so hard. And then everybody probably passed you by that point because they've been training. So longer you out, not only you kind of moving back, but they are moving forward. So that separation is even larger, as time goes on, right?
And that's why a lot of people stop training, sometimes because it's hard to live without jiu-jitsu once you start training. It's such a complete activity. It makes us feel better physically. We're stronger. We feel fit. We feel mentally better. It changes our behavior. It changes the way we are. And once we get away from jiu-jitsu, we feel that something is missing. Sometimes we find another activity, but maybe it's not that complete, right? I'm not saying that other things are not good, but what I feel, from my point of view, jiu-jitsu, it's like a therapy. It's like something that puts you so much into it that you cannot think on nothing else. We all know that. Once you have someone choking you, attacking you, you get so much into it, you are hyper-stimulated, and you're just there. You can't be nowhere else. So this impact of jiu-jitsu in our life, this is something that, in my mind, it goes,
It's very different than any other activity or hobby. That's for
exactly.
Sure. That's for sure. Listen, you've been on the mat for a very, very long time. You started early on in Brazil. You moved to Europe, and now you have academy over there and making that impact. But I think what's always interesting, talk to individuals as yourself, is that change that took place, right? As how jiu-jitsu looked way back in the 90s and how jiu-jitsu looks today. Talk about that a little bit. What are the big things that have changed? What are some of the things that maybe surprised you as jiu-jitsu continues evolving?
If you see jiu-jitsu in the past, jiu-jitsu was, the way we train was more, if I say back in 90s, in beginning of 90s, before the tournament, jiu-jitsu was a lot about self-defense. We have the competitions, everybody trained for competitions, but it was very important and appreciated the knowledge related to self-defense, because it was a different world we live. So people trained jiu-jitsu and they would prepare for competitions, but the self-defense was an important aspect. And the jiu-jitsu train was done in a different way. So for example, what we do nowadays in a no-gi class, it was somehow done in the self-defense class. We used to have a train called taparia, where both can slap each other. Nowadays, you don't have this type of training. So
that sounds like fun.
It's like, you can, a lot of slaps on the belly and on the back, So it's more about distance management. So both could use jiu-jitsu, both could slap each other. We had the train that we call bloqueio, when one fighter or one student has a boxing gloves, and the other student could use only jiu-jitsu. We had this type of trainings once per week, twice per week. So because every instructor was worried about the possibility of have his students in a street situation where he would get beaten. Nowadays, if you teach jiu-jitsu and eventually a student use this in the street, maybe he'll get sued, he'll pay a very high fee, and he will also maybe even end up in jail, depending on the country and the city. So, the way we approach self-defense nowadays is more something to study, to bring us confidence. It's not for a real fight. Maybe the way we approach self-defense nowadays is to bring people the confidence that they can do things, that they can be prepared or at least know something in an extreme situation, So I think the self-defense aspect, and of course, those fighters that at that time, they were very good in this aspect, nowadays, they will find this in MMA. Because if you think, this part of Jiu-Jitsu didn't disappear. It's in MMA. If you prepare one fighter to use Jiu-Jitsu in MMA, you're going to teach him the self-defense, basically the self-defense techniques that we used to learn in the past as a self-defense curriculum, And nowadays, I think we study self-defense more something like somebody's trying to hurt you and you have to deal with that. He's still alive, but in a different way, And the sport changes in other aspects, because you have the rules, a different set of rules. So it evolved in a different way, We have also the big impact of the internet because, in the past, the only way to learn jiu-jitsu or you live in Rio de Janeiro and you would sign in one of the Gracie schools, or you would train maybe in a smaller school and you would have to go to the tournaments. And like I used to do when I was a kid, I go to the tournaments in the morning and I stay there till the evening. That's how we learn jiu-jitsu. We learn watching the students from other schools, how they approach techniques, and it was a different way of learning. Also, if you train in a school at that time, the knowledge was not accessible to everyone. You almost had to get the confidence of people so they would teach things. It was not like just you come, you sign, you have a curriculum, you learn. In the 90s, when I started Jiu-Jitsu, it was a lot of competition orientation, a lot of self-defense orientation, but still, you have to prove your values, what you're made of. And then people would start sharing techniques with you, because you had that culture of creonte. You guys, you cannot switch teams, you cannot share knowledge. It was considered a bad thing if you share your knowledge with someone else, especially from another club. This was unacceptable, but this is something that really changed. Nowadays, we all share techniques. It's appreciated, so I see these different things, different approach to jiu-jitsu.
Well, another component of being on a mat for a very long time is that you have some of your training partners now are scattered around the world, right? And they have their own academies in different countries and different regions, right? How does that feel, being, you being in one side and your training partners are somewhere else, and you guys all successfully growing the jiu-jitsu and spreading the word of jiu-jitsu?
I think, Thomas, we all took it as a mission. It came to a point that it became a mission, that we realized that it was not only about us. At first you do it for yourself. Like in my case, when I came to Slovenia, I came at first to teach jiu-jitsu for MMA fighters. As I said, I had an adventure in mind. I was curious about what would come out of it. But once you move to a country, you realize that you have to teach the behavior on the mat. You have to, the way you walk, it will be the reference to people, the way you move, the way you talk. And then you realize that you have much more to do, So this was the reality, when you come to a place like I did. And once I see my friends in all those places, I see that they took the same responsibility to share the culture, to share how we Brazilians see jiu-jitsu. Because in reality, this is what made jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, or what we used to call jiu-jitsu, Yeah? Now it's called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but the whole difference from the traditional style from Japan is the family approach of the Gracie family. I believe that this was something that you used to feel when you start training back then. When I came to Gracie Barra to train, half, I will not say half of the students, but many of them, they were member of the family. It was a family environment, so you're accepted in a family. People expect you to behave as a family member, so this became, and all the way Brazilians are and lovely. And I think this is something that we end up realizing that is a mission. And I see that when I see my friends around the globe, they took this responsibility, not only to share techniques, because as you know, you can open the internet and find techniques. But I think we all have this responsibility of sharing the culture. And I think that is amazing. It's really nice.
Do you still keep in touch with your training partners way back from the day?
I talk with a lot of them. A week ago, I talked for 1 hour with Master Carlos Gracie Jr. So I'm still in touch with him. I talked with my first instructor, Master Carlos Augusto, the guy that taught me my first jiu-jitsu classes. I try to be in touch with those people that were important in my life. But, nowadays we're all very busy. We all have to teach, manage school. You know how it's hard. It's not only the classes, but you have a lot of work around. So we are all very busy, but every time we have opportunity, we get together, especially here from Europe, the Gracie Barra members, me and Lagarto, Braulio, Vitor, we try to get together as much as possible. And we try, Unfortunately, a lot of team members from the past, I don't see them anymore. They moved to different places and they have a different life, but I still carry them on my heart.
That's awesome part. Listen, as you developing your academy in Europe, there's one of the things I wanted to ask you early on and I forgot about it. Is what do you find the biggest differences between jiu-jitsu in Europe as it's being established or as it continues evolving, and jiu-jitsu in the United States? Most of the guys who listen, or guys and girls who listen to this show, they're probably based on from US. So I'm curious. My curiosity point is how is jiu-jitsu in Europe?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have in different parts of Europe, jiu-jitsu will be developed in different levels. You're gonna come to the north, to the Nordic countries. If you go in Poland, for example, jiu-jitsu is really strong. We have a lot of black belts. The level is really high. It's crazy. They train a lot. The clubs get together. They bring the best instructors to teach them seminars, camps. They take it very serious. In UK, the scene is very strong too. You have Roger and other instructors like Vitor, as I said, Braulio, Lagarto. You have a lot of great instructors in UK, what make a very strong scene there. I live in Slovenia, it's a Central Europe. So here we have good instructors in Austria, not only from Gracie Barra, but from other schools as well. In Croatia, for example, and Serbia, they have a very strong jiu-jitsu scene. Jiu-jitsu exists there for longer. They brought jiu-jitsu to that region for much longer than here in Slovenia. You have countries where you have more black belts and more people teaching jiu-jitsu, but still places where the instructors are lower belts, just like it was in Brazil in the past or in America in the past. You still have places where you have blue belts or purple belts teaching, because there is not a lot of instructors prepared to teach for everyone, but it's a nice scene. You have competitions. You have great athletes. In Norway, you have good athletes. It's growing. People like fighting. They like martial arts, and it's beautiful. I expect in maybe maybe 5-10 years that you're going to see some from here.
Do you think there will be a point of time in the future where jiu-jitsu is going to be everywhere? I mean, literally every country, every major city will have jiu-jitsu presence?
Nowadays, yeah. I didn't believe before, but now I believe. Because the first time Master Carlos talked with us about it, we did just had jiu-jitsu in Rio de Janeiro, and it's in a few places around Brazil, but not really well organized. You have already something happening in America, but really small. And the sport was not. When did the words came to America? Do you guys remember? I think it was 2000. Before the words went to America, I think jiu-jitsu was in this way. So it's like this, you have this process of people really interested, but not a lot of people prepared, so it's quite interesting to see how it's going.
Do you see a difference? I was going to ask, do you see a difference in the students themselves throughout the European countries compared to Brazil or compared to the US? Do they train differently? Is there a different mindset?
Well, you see dedicated people everywhere, right? It's like, of course, the culture affect people on the way they are and the way they live. Maybe the level of education can help as well. When they have access to more information and they search for, I think the culture of searching for information, sometimes in some countries, you don't have this culture of searching for the information. And I think that in some countries, you have more of this drive for the knowledge and everything. But I think that you're going to find dedicated people in every country. You're going to find all type of people everywhere. I don't think the nationality or these things would affect so much.
Nice. Go ahead.
I thought you wanted to say something.
I thought you looked up the worlds. So
well, I was looking up the worlds, but I couldn't find the exact date when it actually came to US. So I was not able to. I'll my mind.
Yeah,
I'm going to find it later.
He won't let it
I
go.
won't let it go. I'm going to figure out exact time.
But in the past in Brazil, when in the 90s, it was very common that you have instructors purple belt. I start teaching as a purple belt, so just because you didn't have black belts to teach. So here it happened a lot. But what I see is that it doesn't matter on that level. Everyone here in Europe, at least most of people that I'm in touch with, they are really looking for knowledge. They are trying to learn jiu-jitsu. They are trying to learn Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They are searching for the history. They are searching for the techniques. They have the access to the competitions, and they search the athletes. So I think it's a matter of time, to achieve a different level. You already can see some athletes in the big scene. I have here students competing in the highest level, going to Abu Dhabi, to the Worlds, to the Europeans. But, they have big challenges because, for example, in America, you have a tournament maybe every weekend. So if you're an athlete, you can really push yourself, get a lot of experience, And here, sometimes they don't have a lot of tournaments, and it makes for them a little harder. But they work so hard. I have students that work so hard that I admire that dedication. I look at them, and it doesn't matter, where you come from. You can come from a small country like Slovenia, and you can do things. I have a student that Nate Hodnik, he's a European champion no-gi category and absolute. And he comes from Slovenia, I think he proved, not only him, but also the other athletes, they prove that they can do things. And I already see that they are inspiring a next generation. It's already a next generation willing to win big events, so we are now preparing for a new competition. They are preparing for the Europeans and for other events. So it's just a matter of time to see jiu-jitsu in Europe on the same level that we have all over America and Brazil. I think it will be always a little difference, but I think we're going to achieve that high level if we're not there yet.
Do you think that sometimes that not having access to jiu-jitsu or to instructors or some of things gives students actually fire, gives them the drive to be even better than they normally would? Like I remember 20 plus years ago when I was starting jiu-jitsu, I had to literally drive hour and a half to the academy, and I could only go on specific days because classes were offered, 4 or 5 times, a week. And there were only, and if I didn't make to the class, next time I had to go like next week because that's just, it's life, right? But today, in some of the major cities or in US or maybe UK or, some parts of the Europe, I mean, the jiu-jitsu is in every major city. And getting to jiu-jitsu, it takes, 15, 20, some people live literally across the street. And sometimes I feel that we can't take it for granted. Like we are spoiled a little bit. Do you find, that sometimes not having things actually gives us more fire to be more motivated and drive and wanting more?
Listen, if I look back, all right, if I compare, because I remember, for example, Márcio Feitosa, he lived across the street in Gracie Barra, and he was one of the toughest training partners I ever had, And at the same time, I had also people that, like students that drive 1 hour, an hour and a half. Sometimes I go to places to teach and I see that they don't have even instructors and they push so hard. So I think it's a lot related of who you are and how bad you want it. It's a lot about how much you see the jiu-jitsu in your life. I think that you just like maybe I was the same. I also didn't live in Barra da Tijuca. I live also 1 hour and a half from there. So every day I had to go and back. So around 2 to 3 hours in a bus or in a car to get back home. So I think that some people will really have this in their heart and they want it so bad. And it's not a matter also on social status, because I used to believe on that. I used to teach for kids from favela, and I see they are so hungry, they want to learn so bad. But, with life experience, I realized that it's somewhere on the human being, you have it or not. I also met people that they come from a well family, they have everything, but they were so dedicated, So I start to realize that it's about how important is jiu-jitsu in your life. This is how you can measure. If jiu-jitsu really has an enormous impact to your life, you're going to do whatever you can do to learn and get better. So I think you are an example of that. I see you teaching. I see the understanding you have of jiu-jitsu, how much effort you put into it. So, it's a matter of how much you want to learn. And if you want to learn it bad, really bad, you're going to drive 2 or 3 hours. You're going to take a train, a bus. It doesn't matter. You're going to do your best.
Yeah, I mean, you bring a good point. If you really, really want it, you'll do what's needed to get what you want, and it doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu, just life in general. Listen, Carlos, as this episode is coming to the end, we've been at this for over an hour now. At the end of each episode, we have a question for you. We have a question from a previous guest who was sitting in your seat, and they didn't know who they're going to be asking. So they asked the question, and Gary is gonna pass that on to you, and let's see what what are your thoughts on this.
Yeah, this is from Christina Barlan, and she wanted to know if you could go back and meet the kid version of yourself, what conversation would you have? So what would you tell 12-year-old Carlos?
That's a good question. All right. Yeah, I would say to the young Carlos, that's a good question, but I would say to the young Carlos to keep believing, in his dreams to focus on what he wants to happen and not what he don't want to happen. I would tell him to put all his effort on the development of himself and so one day he would be able to help others. I would make him understand that in life we have ups and downs, and that doesn't matter. In the end, everything will be all right.
Nice. Beautiful.
Nice. Good stuff.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Listen, thanks for being here. That's number one. Thanks for talking to us for over an hour at this point and sharing your beautiful, beautiful story of your life. What a great lessons all together. Where can people find you? If anybody wants to connect with you on a more personal level and maybe ask you questions about you or some of the things that you do teach, are you available on social media, websites? Let's talk about that a little bit.
All right. You can find, I have schools, my school is Gracie Ljubljana. It's here in Slovenia. So, of course, if you're visiting Slovenia, you can come to our school. We welcome every BJJ people, every BJJ student, we welcome them here from any different club because it's a small country. Sometimes people passing by, they have always their gi. We jiu-jitsu guys have this habit. So if you're passing by, you can always visit our school.
My wife always gets upset with me because any vacation, the gi's in a suitcase.
Yeah, exactly. So we welcome people here, to train. I will be in the summer camp in Algarve in Portugal from 25th to 29th of July with my Gracie Barra team members, my teammates. And you can find me on Instagram. It's a C Maia GB. You can see me there. I used to post things. Now I might used to post a little more things related to training and things that I'm going through here in this beautiful country. Guys, thank you very much really for the opportunities. I'm really glad to be here. You guys are really nice. I hope we had some good stories and we can inspire some people.
Absolutely.
I think we will.
Phenomenal stories. Thank you for sharing, even some of the personal parts of your life. I mean, that's really what's part of this growth in the community for surrounded around jiu-jitsu. So it's always great to talk to individuals such as yourself, especially that you are on the other side of the globe. It's always interesting to hear and connect with guys who do train somewhere else than the region where we are at. So thanks for being here. Thanks. We do appreciate that.
Very much so. Thank you so much.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Thomas. Bye.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.